Brown Babee really represents my journey to becoming a mom. It was a 10-year journey that included, an ovarian cancer diagnosis. It included, a stage 4 endometriosis diagnosis. It included, many failed rounds of IVF. It included, my neighbor and her husband, approaching my husband and I and saying, let us carry for you.
Hi, my name is Courtney, and welcome to How They Scaled It, where scaling is done with both sides of the brain. Today, I'm bringing on Chelsey Hayes. Chelsey is the co-founder and CEO of Brown Babee Co., a brand born from a deeply personal mission to provide clean, plant-based personal care products for infants and children, particularly those with eczema-prone skin. After facing her own health challenges and struggling to find safe, non-toxic products for her daughter, Chelsey took matters into her own hands and built a company that stands at the intersection of wellness, advocacy, and community. Today, we're unpacking her journey from the spark of an idea to scaling the company with a mission that truly matters. Chelsey, welcome to How They Scaled It.
Thank you. And thank you for that gracious and kind introduction. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Let's jump right into it because I know you have a really cool story. Did you always know that you wanted to start a business, or was this something that kind of evolved out of necessity?
So I have known like since I was 7 years old that I wanted to start a business. I can vividly remember like being outside with my friends, and I don't know if I imagine that like all 7 year olds probably do this, and maybe they don't, but we were saying like telling each other what we wanted to do, when we grew up. And I remember my answer being that I was going to be a businesswoman, and that is unfolding. I think for me, though, especially like at that early age, I didn't know exactly what that looked like, but I knew looking back that the desire was there from a very young age because I did pursue an undergraduate degree in business, and then I got my master's in business. And then here I am now starting many, many years later, building my own business. I think the other thing for me too was that I didn't know this at a very early age, but I picked this up later on, was that if I was going to start or build a business, that it would have to have a strong purpose behind it, that I couldn't
Yeah.
just, create a business or start something just to make money. And I'm seeing that unfold as well.
Yeah. So, how did you get from just knowing you wanted to start a business at 7 years old and kind of going through the process of saying, I know I'm going to do this. I know somehow, somewhere it's going to present itself to me, but like going through college, getting the degree and everything. How did you land on Brown Babee Co. And that product, this eczema prone skin products?
Yeah, so I think that that desire, that inner knowing found me. I don't think I necessarily found it
Mhm.
because after college I did, work in the federal government for many years. But looking back, there were skills that I needed to learn. So primarily in my background, I've been a contract negotiator, negotiating contracts on behalf of the federal government and also a program manager, so building billion-dollar programs on the behalf of the federal government. But all of that experience was necessary in order to be able to build Brown Babee Company because I'm using all of the foundational knowledge that I learned over those many years
Hmm.
to build it. And so I think that really it found me. So my daughter was born with eczema, so she was actually diagnosed at the age of 4 months. And at that time, I'm still in my federal government position. I'm not thinking at that time that I'm going to start a business. The desire is still there that, I would at some point in my journey. But when she was diagnosed with eczema at the age of 4 months old, I just knew that I could not put her on a prescription cream. So her pediatrician said, I can offer you a prescription. And because I spent the last 10 years of my life trying to have a child, and my focus had really changed from, not really changed, but the desire was still there. But my focus
Hmm.
really was on becoming a mom. And I put everything into becoming a mom for those last 10 years that when her pediatrician told me that she had eczema, I just felt this deep responsibility to make sure that I provided her with the best care possible. And so for me, that was not putting her on a prescription um, cream that contains steroids. It just didn't feel right to me. So I started to explore healthier, more natural solutions for my baby's skin. And then that's what actually inspired me to create Brown Baby Company. So I feel that purpose ended up finding me through my
Yeah.
life journey of becoming a mom and having this child who was diagnosed with eczema at the age of 4 months.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that also, did you kind of have this moment of this is it? Like this is the thing. Like what was like that moment where you're like I can make this into a business?
To be honest, so I did have that moment. So it was other people telling me. So the way
Yeah.
it kind of worked out for me was I didn't know how to formulate. So I watched formulators on YouTube and finally got the nerve up to reach out to one to work with me to formulate after I did my own research on what I wanted to create just for my own baby. And so I worked with her over the course of several months to create the original product that I used on my daughter. And I still wasn't thinking that it could be a business, but I do remember after finishing like that internship with that young lady, was her to tell me to keep going. And
Yeah.
so it would be along the way, like people would tell me to keep going, to keep
Hmm.
moving in it. And it probably was maybe like 2 years after that that I really realized that I could make it into a business. But something had to happen first. I had to sit down and
Yeah.
really understand my why. Because for a
Hmm.
long time, I thought that the why was about my daughter's eczema.
Right.
And not realizing that that was not a strong enough why, but sitting down for a year and allowing myself to just be a mom and enjoy the role of being a mother since I had
Hmm.
tried so many years to become a mom is how I discovered my why. And the why really is for me to build something collectively with other people that is much,
Yeah.
much bigger than ourselves. And so it was once the why really connected, is
Hmm.
when I said, oh, now I can go forth and really
Yeah.
pursue this.
Yeah, I love that hustle at the beginning of saying, okay, I don't want to put my child on this prescription, but I don't really, there's no real solution here. So just going to YouTube and watching formulators is like, not many people do that. I think a lot of people have that problem, but then they kind of stop and they just test a lot of different things, different existing products. But I love that you did your homework and then you reached out to somebody and then all of a sudden people telling you like keep going, you have something like that doesn't happen very often. So I'm glad that you listened to them.
Yeah, I'm glad that I listened as well. Now, there were moments though that I would doubt myself, but
Yeah.
I would push forward, and then there would be another person at the right time that would tell me to keep going.
Yeah, that's one thing that when we've had previous conversations that I really appreciate about you, or you kind of are looking at different people in your life who show up at the right time and present the solution or present a little bit more of a push, and identifying those people and listening to them I think is really hard for most people, most founders too, because they're getting so much noise all the time.
Mhm.
But how have you kind of been able to identify this is someone I need to listen to, I need to keep pushing?
So I think my life journey and some of the things that I've experienced in my life over the last probably 15 years have really forced me to stop and listen, and really listen from a deeper place and not from like the external, like you're talking
Yeah.
when you mentioned the noise, because that's exactly what it is, right? And we still get it. Like I still get people telling me, oh, you should do this and you should do that, and
Right.
having to really center myself and focus on what is coming from within you, because those answers are already there, and it's typically someone just coming to confirm what you already know. And so, to answer your question, I think what really has helped to shape that is just life circumstances. Being diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2015, I think that anyone who has had a cancer diagnosis, it changes you because you're immediately forced in that moment to really understand that there's nothing that can save you at this point. How much money, no matter how much money you have, like your money's not going to save you. How much education you have, your education is not going to save you. Your family can't save you. And you have to turn. For me, I had to turn to something that was bigger than me. And for me, I had already had that faith. Like I had already had faith because I'd grown up with it. But really having it up until that point, I didn't have it at the same level. And so for me, it was surrendering to that the higher power within me, and saying, this is bigger than me, and I need you to show up for me. If you're kind and you're loving, and this is the moment where I really need you to show up. And I saw, God show up for me, and through people. Through the love that other people, had, through prayer, through all of that. And I know it was that particular circumstance that helped shape my inner knowing and learning to listen and be still and listen. And then some other things after that, like going through IVF and not being able to, have a child over those 10 years. And then my neighbor, stepping in to say, her and her husband to say, let us carry for you. Though all of those things that happened were shaped by being still and listening to what's happening on the inside of me. And I still do that. I do that in the business journey as well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that all of that has given you like an incredible perspective on the business, because being a founder, you go through so many trials and tribulations and these incredible challenges, but being able to kind of zoom out and look at like what's really important and through everything you've been through, I'm sure that that's giving you kind of like a really strong suit of armor walking into this with like a community behind you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. When you think about kind of in the early days, which I know you're a little bit in the early days still, but as you were formulating and just getting the business off the ground, what were the biggest hurdles that you were facing kind of at the beginning?
So that is a really good question. So in the beginning, I think the biggest hurdle was being naive. I think being naive about the funding and what it was going to take to really get the business off the ground, and timing. Like everything, timing is everything, and sometimes you I know like in business, they tell you, like I've been told that you have to move. You have to move and you have to be, creating something. But I actually don't, I guess, agree with that necessarily anymore. There are times to be still in business, and there are times to move. But I would say funding and timing were the biggest hurdles. For me, when it comes to funding, it was being naive about, oh, this is a great idea, and I'm just going to be able to pitch this to investors, and they're going to fund this. And it was after several no's that I realized that, okay, I need to rely on what it is that I've learned, and that's to be still. And so when I allowed myself to be still, then the answers around funding, came, and it was that stop looking outside of yourself for what you already have within you. And so that led me to look at, my own savings and my own, personal investments, and move things around to see what I could actually invest in myself. And so doing that, I was able to see to look and say, okay, so I have $30,000 of my own, money that I could put into Brown Babee and launch this. And so I told my co-founders, because I'm a team of three, so it's me and two other co-founders. And so during a team meeting, I told my co-founders, I'm ready to bet on myself. Like, let's
Yeah.
just bet on us. And I have 30,000. And while we have three SKUs and not, one SKU, I don't know if we can do it
Yeah.
with the three SKUs we have, but I know we could do it with one SKU.
Hmm.
And but just opening up and allowing myself to be vulnerable and let them know what I do have and putting that out there. Then one of my other co-founders said, I have 30,000 as well. I can contribute 30,000 to this. And then meeting with our business advisor, we let her know that we were willing to bet on ourselves. We were ready, and we had 60,000 that we were going to invest in ourselves.
Yeah.
And she said, "I'm going to match you." And so it was that while that was a hurdle, while
Yeah.
funding was a hurdle, I learned something through that process. And what I learned is that believing in myself is really crucial on this journey.
Hmm.
That we as founders, a lot of times will look outside of
Yeah.
ourselves when we already have the answers, within us. And that's something that I'm learning. I'm also learning that the people that have, come to join me on this journey are there for a reason.
Yeah.
And so when I share what it is that we may be struggling with, that's why they're there. They're smarter than me. They have resources that, I
Hmm.
necessarily don't have. And that's why they're on the journey to help support the unfolding of the vision of Brown Babee.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It's like a weird noise. Anyways, sorry, we'll cut that. That no, that's an amazing kind of journey to get to funding, because I think that while those investors said no, which was probably felt like a really big setback, like it felt like, what am I doing? Like, am I in the right place? Um, what I, sorry, is there like, are you
Yes,
hearing that
so
noise?
I'm on my MacBook, and so my text messages are coming
Oh,
through. And so one of my co-founders, my business partner, is texting me, and
oh,
so
okay.
each time the text message comes through, it's coming through.
Right, it
Text.
dings here.
Yeah,
Is there
so
a way to turn the sound notification off on it?
I am going to see if I can do that. You know what? I'm going to shut it down. Let's do that.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Sorry. I
Sorry, I know.
if you're going to have to cut some things out, but if we need to record longer, we can. Or, you
Yeah,
know.
okay, cool, cool, perfect. Okay, cool. So, all right, cool. No, that's a really amazing to see that you've kind of went through this process with founders or with investors, and to say no a lot and get that answer no must have been really challenging. But to have like the wherewithal to turn to like, okay, what do I have? Like, I do believe in myself still. Like, I think these guys are wrong. What's great about funding yourself, while it's so much scarier and it takes a lot more gumption to do it, you retain all your power, and you don't have to rely on these investors, and then you don't have to give parts of your business away when you're still kind of figuring out exactly what that business is. So I think that that's going to end up being a much better thing for you in the long run. And maybe you will have investors later, but then you'll have much more power and much more control from your business. So I think that the fact that you spent so much time building your community and like listening to the right people, being really mindful about that, kind of put you in the best position possible, even through those initial struggles.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that too. I would also say even before the funding, one of the other challenges that or hurdles that I had to overcome was that the setbacks are as equally important to the journey as the yeses. Like the no's are equally as important, right, as the yeses and those wins. And because I had another very early on, I guess, experience that happened that looked like as if the journey was not going to happen. So I had a
Yeah.
co-founder very early on, and she was happened to be connected to investors as well. And but after we pitched those investors, she realized that the building of this business was going to take more than she
Mhm.
was able to give. because of certain personal circumstances that were happening in her life. Having two children, becoming a single mom, that's a lot. And she came to me and she said, Chelsey, I'm not going to be able to continue this journey with you, but you have to keep going. And that felt like a setback, like, like, no,
Yeah.
you have to do it with me. And she's like, no, I'm not going to be able to. And then so after it took about another year before my actual co-founders came and showed up. But the lesson in that was that she was there at that exact time. And she wasn't supposed to go the journey. She was just there to help me see that the idea was a good idea and it was an idea that could go forth. And so that was another hurdle that I overcame in order to open that door for the people that were going to be able to support it and continue the journey with me to whenever the next time that they may have to I guess release themselves or go off and do something else. But everyone shows up when they're supposed to show up for however long they're supposed to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like you have kind of like hurdles, but in hindsight, they're more like steps rather than hurdles. Where
Yeah,
it's like I needed this in order to get to the next place, which is a really excellent mindset to have as a founder.
absolutely.
Um, you are, like you kind of mentioned, you needed a why for this business. Like that was super important for you. And a lot of founders really struggle with balancing the purpose of their business with profitability, which is kind of equally as important in some ways. How do you ensure that Brown Babee Co. is staying true to the mission while also building something that is really scalable?
Oh, wow. That is a great question. Um, I think it's a great question because of the stage that we're in. Um,
Hmm.
and being a very early stage company, so we haven't launched. We actually um, don't plan to launch until October 2025, but we are going to be doing a pre-launch in August. But I think balancing the purpose and profitability of the business really starts with our why and our mission, and then the core values as well. So knowing that we're committed to providing safe and effective solutions for children that are natural or plant-based is what guides every decision that we make, right? But then also making sure that we're building a scalable business while maintaining that mission and that purpose.
Yeah.
For us, looks like at this stage of the business, making sure that we have strategic partnerships that make sense, right?
Yeah.
So we just decided on a developer and manufacturer that develops clean beauty. We had initially interviewed several prior to, but as we're getting closer to going to develop this product, we're like, okay, does that still make sense from us? Knowing what we know now at this stage in the journey, does it still make sense to partner with one of the previous developers and manufacturers that we interviewed with or interviewed? And we realized no, we needed a strategic partner that could offer this, all of these
Yeah.
things. And so we went back out to look again. And in doing that, we were able to find a strategic partner that not only does the product development and the manufacturing, but also does like the 3PL shipping and
Oh,
also,
nice.
right. And this particular partner also started as a brand, just like us,
Hmm.
in growing a business and scaling a business. And going through those pitfalls and those hurdles, and now they're setting up the manufacturing arm, right? And so we
Yeah.
realized that we need to be partnered with someone with a partner who understands what it takes to go from an idea to growth to scaling and to
Yeah.
and investing, investors receiving
Hmm.
investment as well. And so I think for us, and I would say for any founder very very early on, it's about strategic partnerships. Just you have to get very comfortable about talking about your business,
Mm-hmm.
because you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know how the people that come and join you on the journey, how those partners are going to strategically help you build your business. So for us, building that scalability means strategic partnerships. It also means making sure that the focusing on the integrity of our product,
Yeah.
making sure that we create and prioritize creating a high quality product very early on. Not saying that we're putting a perfect product out into the market.
Right.
We want it to be, pretty much solid before we go out to market, because you only get one chance to make a good impression, right? And then those reviews, you don't want terrible reviews when you
Mm-hmm.
take your product out there to market. So it's really prioritizing the integrity of the product that we're creating, and then making sure that solution works for our customers, so that we can increase our trust and our loyalty among those customers for long-term success. And then also, I think for us, it that scalability, what that looks like for
Mm-hmm.
us is making sure that we engage those customers, that those
Yes.
early customers that that connect with our product, that use our product, and getting actively listening to them and
Yeah.
what their feedback is, and closing that feedback loop, and then refining the product, based on their feedback, is really going to be important
Yeah.
to us as it relates to balancing the purpose with the profitability in the early stages.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes back to what you were saying around like a lot of times people in business are like, you got to move fast. You got to keep moving. You got to put stuff out there. And in the tech world, it's, move fast and break things. And I've found with consumer products that is not true. Like, you need a good product before you go out there. You need the right strategic partnerships so you can deliver on what you're promising.
Mhm.
And so it feels like you've been very mindful at every step. Like, what is the right strategic partnership? Changing your mind on it. That's huge. Even though you put all this time into developing one relationship, realizing, this doesn't actually cover what we need. Let's find something else. I think all of that stuff is going to really add up and kind of like compound into when you do launch, it's going to be a lot faster to get to, the success.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it goes back to what you said too about all of the noise,
Yeah.
because we have been in some accelerators where
Mm-hmm.
we've had mentors who told us, September, it's too long, it's too far away to launch. Let's see if
Right.
you can cut that in half. And so I hear it, but that inner knowing would still tell me no. But it's
Yeah.
telling me no for a reason. And learning to trust that knowing of why you're doing what you're doing um, becomes really important, because you are going to get people to tell you you should do it this way or you should do it that
Mm-hmm.
way. But not rushing allows you to make better and more informed decisions at the point, at different points in time, so that you can say, what, maybe this isn't the best partnership for
Yeah.
us. We need to look at this again and make a different choice. So that is something that I have come to learn on this journey, is different from a SaaS company and going out there quickly and breaking things, is to
Yeah.
really make sure we have that foundation, the product and the partnerships.
Yeah. Another big element of your brand is, especially for like consumer product brands like yours, is the branding and the storytelling. How have you developed? Because that's probably like the most fun part is coming up with the brand and your name and your logo and all that stuff. How has that process been for you?
I would say that process has been very much intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
just like just like the journey has felt very intuitive. The
Yeah.
name has felt very intuitive as well. Very early on, that name came to me very, very early on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've stuck with that name. And I have heard, people have told me like that we should change the name, but trusting that is the right name for the right reason. And then seeing everything unfold from that, even the product packaging that we've developed,
Mm-hmm.
the story, It all has been very intuitive. I will say, because we're still very much early in this process, that one of the things that I have really stuck to is leading with the story. And what I found is that leading with the story, um, and it has to be compelling. So you do have to have a compelling story, but leading with that has you can't go wrong. You can't go
Yeah.
wrong when you lead with your story.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you have a very good story, which is good for you. And the brand itself, I think also it came out of necessity and from this purpose, which is all great things, but also sticking to your guns with the name Brown Baby Co. I think that a lot of founders would kind of get scared off by it because the reason that they wanted you to change your name was just because they didn't want to exclude anyone, right? They didn't want to say, oh, this is only for brown babies, like because really Brown Baby Co. supports all ethnicities, right? All skin tones, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So and I will say that some people have, when they do hear the name, they do believe that it resonates with only, for children of color. But then
Mm-hmm.
there have been a large majority of people when they hear the name, that's not the first thing that comes to mind for them. But Brown Baby really represents my journey to becoming a
Mm-hmm.
mom. It was
Yeah.
a 10-year journey that included, an ovarian cancer diagnosis. It included, a stage 4 endometriosis diagnosis. It included, many failed rounds of IVF. It included, my neighbor and her husband, approaching my husband and I and saying, let us carry for you. So, Brown Baby really represents my journey to becoming a mom and having the child, that I had, or that I have. But I think too, by leading with the story, the
Yeah.
people that are meant to understand it, the people that are going to support it, they understand it from that perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the reality is that everyone is not going to buy your product. No, not everyone buys any business's product,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your product is for the community that that uses and believes in the brand. And so I believe that the community, of moms and of dads, that use the product will believe in the brand, and they understand that it's for all children.
Yeah. And with good enough marketing, you can explain that to people.
Absolutely.
So you have had some early recognition, which is really cool. You were a recognized as a Black Ambition Prize semifinalist, so congratulations on that.
Thank
Um, with that recognition, how has that kind of helped navigate the journey, or what impact has that made with Brown Baby Co?
Yeah, so we in 2024 we were recognized as Black Ambition Prize semifinalists, and then we also participated in the New Voices Foundation,
Yes.
Madam C.J. Walker Institute PACE Boot Camp, and we just finished that up. That was a 13-week program.
Mm-hmm.
We just finished that up as well. But I think that what both of these programs have provided for us is a solid foundation to be able to launch and execute our business
Mm-hmm.
effectively. So the timing of even being in those programs was, it was necessary, and it was needed. I think the reason that we applied to those programs was, to see, what we had, was that good enough,
Yeah.
and that helped us to realize, like, oh, we do have something and we should continue to move forward. But even beyond that, like both of those programs really helped give us the tools, and the resources that we need to avoid some of the mistakes that
Yeah.
new founders face. And then the mentorship and then the networking opportunities that we gained from, being a part of these programs, is invaluable. Um, these programs have helped us to learn from other experienced founders and then
Mm-hmm.
industry experts as well. And then it boosted our confidence.
Yeah.
and then helped us to refine some of our strategies
Mhm.
for when we do launch and when we do grow and we do scale. And then we have a community. So we have a community of other founders and of mentors that we can reach out to and access very quickly if we need
Mhm.
to ask very different questions. And so I think that being a part of both programs has really led to us building a
Yeah.
strong foundation to be able to support the growth, the future growth of Brown Babee and the future scaling of Brown Babee.
Yeah, I think that's such a good it's like that you called out that you have kind of this like community of other founders and mentors. So I think a lot of founders just feel so lonely and isolated. And one of the reasons that we started this podcast was because all founders feel like they have these very unique problems, but they really don't. Like everybody's kind of going through the same stuff.
Right.
And so to have kind of someone at your fingertips that you can like tap on their shoulder and be like, I'm dealing with this crazy thing. I don't know how to deal with it. Is really powerful. And I think it's probably pretty good advice to tell other founders to go find those boot camps and those accelerators and things like that and find those little pockets of community where you can, because it sounds like it made a pretty big difference for you guys.
Absolutely. And then I think you get to see too where you are in the process. I know in the New Voices Foundation bootcamp, we were the only company that was still pre-launch, that
Mm-hmm.
hadn't, launched their business yet. And you get to see um, where you are in the process, and you
Yeah.
get to see that even these later stage founders, they're still dealing with like a lot of the same issues that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
deal with, and then they're, like you said, they're all dealing with them as well together
Yeah.
collectively, but that those a lot of those problems never go away. It's
Yeah.
part of the process of
Yeah.
being in business.
Yeah, I always talk about being like a business owner, a founder, a CEO is like you're constantly solving a Rubik's Cube, and every time you like do the last turn, it turns into a larger Rubik's Cube, and there's like a whole nother thing you have to solve, and you're just like problem solving is the job, and so as long as you can accept that, then you'll find success.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. I like that.
So, looking ahead over the next 5 years, what is your vision for Brown Baby Co?
Oh wow, this is a great question. So I think, because I don't like to tie it to anything tangible. So I'm
Hmm.
gonna just keep it really. I'm just gonna take it back to my why,
Yeah.
and that is to my vision is to collectively build with other people
Hmm.
um, something that's bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And I see us doing that already, and I see us continuing to build a Brown Baby into that entity, into it that is much bigger than just us and the
Yeah.
community that we serve.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of really nicely leads into my next question around beyond the product itself. So, beyond just like the creams or, your SKUs, how are you starting to foster that community um, with parents or kind of with people who have babies with eczema on like a deeper level? How are you starting to foster that community?
That's another good question. I think so, because we're still very early stage, and I keep saying this,
Yes.
and I sound like a broken record, but we are currently building out our customer experience roadmap and the
Yeah.
roadmap um, to launch, right? And so we are refining exactly like our strategies for being able
Mhm.
to connect with parents on a deeper level, like what that's going to look like. But I think at this very early stage, what that looks like is uh, it looks like me being here and
Yeah.
sharing the
Yeah.
story of Brown Baby,
Hmm.
sharing the story of my journey and what led me to build um, the company, is part of fostering that community, g- so that people can really get behind it and support it. But when it comes to more of like the strategic or the strategy of how we're going to execute that, that is something that we're still laying down. But
Yeah.
telling the story, sharing the
Yeah.
story, and, yeah.
Yeah, focusing on that mission. And I think, again, like those things will start presenting themselves to you, just like this podcast kind of presented itself to you, and just
Absolutely.
taking those opportunities where you can find them.
Absolutely.
So, one question I ask everybody is, if you could give yourself a piece of advice when you were just starting Brown Baby Co., what would that advice be?
I would say, I would tell myself that you are worthy,
Yeah.
because there was, in the very beginning, I didn't believe that I was worthy. If you'd have told me back then that I would be here at this
Hmm.
point, having, two co-founders, um, us, investing in ourselves, and me being on a podcast with you to share,
Hmm.
I would not have believed it. Um,
Yeah.
and because I did not believe that I was worthy, I didn't believe I could, that I could do it.
Hmm.
But now I believe. I believe that I'm
Yeah.
worthy. I believe that we are all worthy. I believe that there's enough room for all of us,
Yeah.
to build our dreams, to be supported, um, in building our dreams. So I would
Hmm.
tell myself that, to believe that you're worthy.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, so obviously like imposter syndrome is kind of like what you're touching on here, and it's when you think about yourself when you were 7 years old and you were saying, I'm going to start a business, you definitely knew you were worthy then. And then all these things happen in your life and you get all this doubt and stuff. And to just like cut through that and remember what that 7 year old was thinking, get in that mindset, I think is kind of a beautiful thing. And to layer that with all of your experiences, I think you're definitely worthy of Brown Baby Co. And I think Brown Baby Co. is definitely worthy of the success that I know is coming for it.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Well, so to kind of wrap up, can you tell us where people can find you online?
Yeah, so you can find us online at www.brownbabee.com. And so it's spelled BROWNBABEE. And then you can find us on Instagram at Brown Baby Co. And you can find us on Facebook at Brown Baby Co. And all social media handles actually at Brown Baby Co.
Amazing. Great. And we'll tag you so people can click and find you. But I'm very excited. Thank you so much for being on the show, Chelsey. This has been a really lovely conversation.
Thank you. And thank you so much for reaching out, and for believing in me, because I know when we first talked, I was like, "Oh, I haven't scaled anything yet." But thank you.
Yeah, this will be a great benchmark that you can look back on in a couple of years and be like, whoa, like, look at how far we've come.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And thank you to everyone listening on the go. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, share with a friend, leave us a review. And if there's anything that you'd like to hear, please just let us know. For more insights, please follow us on LinkedIn or visit rightleftagency.com. And we'll be back next time with more stories of success, innovation, and marketing strategies to help you grow. Thank you so much.